Before we begin, this story contains descriptions of systematic violence, forced labor, and mutilation, including violence against children. These events are historical and documented, but they are difficult to hear. If that's something you need to step away from, we understand. Take care of yourself first. In 1885, a roomful of European diplomats handed one man personal ownership of a territory 76 times the size of his own country. He told them he wanted to help people. He called it the Congo Free State. He never set foot in it, and when it was finally taken from him, 23 years later, he burned the records. Furnaces in Brussels ran for 8 days. "I will give them my Congo," he reportedly said, "but they have no right to know what I did there." Listening to the unlit room. Every story in here actually happened. That's the part that should scare you. New stories every day, Monday through Saturday. Today, the king who owned a country, and the accounting system that turned severed hands into currency. His name was Leopold II, King of the Belgians. Belgium itself was a small country, about the size of Maryland. Leopold wanted an empire, not for Belgium, for himself. And in 1884, he found his opening at a conference table in Berlin. The Berlin Conference of 1884 to 85 was where European powers carved up Africa. Leopold had spent years preparing for this moment. He'd courted explorers. He'd funded missionary expeditions. He'd established a front organization, the International Association of the Congo, that sounded like a humanitarian charity. At the conference, he presented himself as a philanthropist, a man of science and faith. He promised free trade. He promised no taxes. He promised to bring civilization and Christianity to Central Africa. The conference believed him, or at least they found it convenient to believe him. They granted Leopold personal sovereignty over the Congo Basin, not as a Belgian colony, but as his private property. One man now owned nearly 1 million square miles of Central Africa, and every person living on it. Leopold ruled the Congo from a desk in Brussels. He never visited. He never saw the rivers, the forests, or the people whose lives he controlled. He didn't need to. He had intermediaries, and he had the Force Publique, a colonial army staffed by European officers commanding Congolese soldiers, built to enforce whatever Leopold needed enforced. At first it was ivory, elephant tusks shipped back to Europe by the ton. But in the 1890s, something changed. The global demand for rubber exploded. Bicycles, telegraph insulation, and soon automobiles all needed it. The Congo's forests were full of wild rubber vines, and Leopold intended to harvest every last one of them. It's worth pausing here. At this point in the story, the Congo Free State was already an exploitative regime. Forced labor, extraction, a foreign king who'd never set foot on the continent controlling a territory the size of Western Europe. But what came next turned exploitation into something much worse. Micro Cliffhanger 1. The king called it the Congo Free State. Nothing about it was free. Leopold imposed rubber quotas on villages across the Congo interior. Every community had a target, every man had a number he had to meet, and the Force Publique was sent to make sure he met it. The enforcement mechanism was simple. When soldiers arrived at a village, they took the women and children hostage. The men were sent into the forest to collect rubber, slashing vines, gathering sap in baskets, sometimes for days at a time. If a man met his quota, his family was released. If he didn't, they weren't. But the system had another layer. The Force Publique's European officers didn't trust their own soldiers. Ammunition was expensive, and officers worried that soldiers would waste bullets hunting game instead of enforcing quotas. So they created a rule. For every cartridge a soldier fired, he had to present proof that it had been used on a person. The proof was a severed right hand. The logic was bureaucratic. A bullet equals a hand equals accountability. But the system immediately produced the opposite of accountability. Soldiers who wanted to hunt or who missed their targets would raid villages, kill inhabitants, and cut off hands to cover the discrepancy. In some regions, hands were collected in baskets and brought to station officers for counting. Photographs from the period, taken by missionaries, particularly Alice Harris, show Congolese men sitting on the ground, staring at the small severed hands of their own children laid out before them. In some cases, hands were smoked to preserve them during transport. They became a form of currency, a unit of measurement in a system designed to track bullets and enforce rubber. This wasn't a war, there was no enemy army, there was no battlefield. This was an accounting system, and the ledger was written in human hands. Micro cliffhanger 2. But across an ocean, one man noticed something. Not the hands, not the hostages, something simpler. He noticed what the ships were carrying and what they weren't. His name was Edmund Dean Mooriel. He was a shipping clerk in Liverpool, a young man who worked for a trading company that handled cargo between Belgium and the Congo. Mooriel's job was routine. He tracked what went onto the ships and what came off. And he noticed a pattern. Ships sailing to the Congo carried guns, ammunition and chains. Ships returning carried rubber and ivory. Nothing else. No European trade goods going in. No manufactured items, no cloth, no tools, no anything that would suggest a commercial exchange between trading partners. If this was free trade, as Leopold had promised at Berlin, where were the trade goods? There was only one explanation. The rubber and ivory weren't being traded. They were being taken. By force. Mooriel quit his job. In 1904, he founded the Congo Reform Association, what historians now recognize as one of the first international human rights campaigns. He published evidence, he gave speeches, he recruited allies. And he found one in the most unlikely place, inside the British government itself. Micro cliffhanger 3. The British consul had just returned from the Congo interior. What he documented would become the most damning report a European government had ever produced about another European's colony. Roger Kaisement was a British consul stationed in Africa. In 1903, the British Foreign Office sent him into the Congo to investigate the rumours. What he found was worse than the rumours. Kaisement travelled through the rubber provinces, interviewing Congolese witnesses, documenting mutilations, recording testimony. His report, submitted to the British Parliament in 1904, laid out the system in clinical detail. The hostage-taking, the quotas, the hands. The villages emptied of their men, their women held in stockades, their children used as leverage. The Kaisement report became an international scandal. Leopold tried to discredit it. He set up his own commission of inquiry, stacked with sympathizers, but even that commission couldn't whitewash what Kaisement had found. The evidence was too overwhelming. Under mounting pressure from Mooriel's campaign, from the British government, and from public opinion across Europe and America, the Belgian parliament moved to strip Leopold of his personal colony. On November 15, 1908, Belgium formally annexed the Congo Free State. Leopold had one final act. Before the handover, he ordered the destruction of the Congo Free State archives. Every document, every ledger, every record of what had been done in his name. Furnaces in Brussels burned for 8 days. Break 64,494,388. In 1890, a Polish-born sailor named Joseph Conrad took a steamboat job on the Congo River. He spent 6 months in Leopold's Congo. What he saw there, the exploitation, the cruelty, the machinery of extraction dressed up as civilization, broke something in him. He went home and wrote a novel about it. He called it Heart of Darkness. It became one of the most studied works of fiction in the English language. Generations of students have analyzed it as an allegory, a meditation on the darkness of the human soul, on what happens when civilization is stripped away. It wasn't an allegory, it was a field report. Conrad had seen the stations, he'd met the officers, he'd watched the system operate. The horror that Kurtz whispers at the end of the novel, the horror, wasn't metaphor, it was testimony. The highest estimates suggest that the population of the Congo's rubber provinces fell by as much as 50% during Leopold's rule. The exact number will never be known, because Leopold burned the records, but some things survived. Kaisement's report survived, Mo Ariel's campaign survived, Alice Harris's photographs survived, and Conrad's novel survived, hiding the truth in plain sight for over a century, shelved in the fiction section of every library in the world. Lee Opold died in 1909, one of the wealthiest men in Europe. He'd built palaces, gardens, monuments, all with rubber money. He never faced a trial, he never visited the Congo. Some stories persist, not because anyone wanted them told, but because the evidence was too large to burn. The furnaces ran for 8 days. They weren't enough. If this one kept you up tonight, good. New stories every day, Monday through Saturday. Subscribe so the next one finds you too. Follow the Unlit Room wherever you listen. Tell a friend, but maybe don't tell them it's all real until after they've finished. Full story on the main channel. Follow if you're wide awake. That was the Unlit Room. See you in the dark.